the dice stay hot. Let me shoot a seven with every shot. Viva Las Vegas! Viva Las Vegas! Viva Las Vegas! I'm gonna give it everything I've got. Lady luck, please let the
Welcome to Vegas Talk Radio, the internet radio show about the news, people, entertainment, opportunities, and events in the best resort and vacation destination and fastest growing city in America, Las Vegas, Nevada. If it's worth your time and money, you'll hear about it here. And now, here's your host, Charlie Bass.
Well, on today's show, we have a special guest. We have a guy who is absolutely no stranger here to Las Vegas because he lives here. And he's performed, I think, in every venue, I think, in the city. And we all know him from television, from movies, from stand-up. He's done it all. And he's really invented the term topical comedy. And his name is David Brenner. David, how are you doing?
Well, after that, I'm going to hang up because nothing's going to top your introduction. Thank you.
You know, I have to tell you, I saw you 20-some years ago, and in Denver, Colorado, when I lived there. And,
oh, wow.
And you had basically invented a type of comedy, I think, that nobody else has ever done the way you've done it. And that's just taking today's newspaper, finding the funny stuff, and then getting up on stage and talking about it. And it was just phenomenal. How did you...
thank you. Well, you know, Mort Saul is really probably the granddaddy of that style. He used to walk up with actually literally with a newspaper. You remember that? And he would do it. So he was the most, and of course for others, Lenny Bruce did it, but without the paper. What I do is I clip, as you know, I clip out all the articles and print off the internet nowadays and on and go up there and that's where I do my writing. I don't know what I'm going to say when I get up there. Boy, you know, people always say, well, do you ever blank out? If I blank out, then people are going to watch me staring into space for 90 minutes because I'll have nothing to say. I don't have an act.
Well, I mean, whatever it is you do it well. So, I mean, that's...
Yeah, so far.
How did you get started in comedy? I mean, did you wake up one day and all of a sudden your parents said, shut up your mouth, and you decided...
No. You know, I'm probably atypical in every area of show business that you can name. I was a late in life child. My father was a vaudeville comedian, song and dance man, and he was the funniest guy. To this day, I've never met anyone that's funny, and I just inherited his genetic. And so I was funny from the time I talked, and I was, you know, the class comedian and funniest kid in the neighborhood, and the funniest guy in the army, and the funniest guy at work, and all that kind of thing. Never, ever, ever thinking for 1 minute that I would ever be doing it for a living. And I went into documentary. I was a writer, producer, director of documentaries for a few years. And then I just got tired of working. I've been working since I was 8.5 years old, and I was just tired of beating my head against the wall over these documentaries, you know, and that nothing's ever, you know, people have the answers. They don't want to implement them. You know, we could solve every problem if we wanted to. I said, what am I doing with my life? And so I took a year off. I said, I'm not going to work. And I had enough to squeak by, and I was always funny, and I always went to comedy clubs, and I would sit there, and not in an egotistical, arrogant way, I would think, well, I'm funnier than that guy. I don't get it, you know? So I just started doing comedy, and I decided before I quit I would do one television show, so that years down the road, when I would say to someone, oh, I did stand-up comedy for a little over a year, they say, oh, you did not. And I'd pull out the video, and I'd show it to them. So I went on The Tonight Show. And that was it. And I was going to stop doing comedy. So I went on The Tonight Show, and it changed my life. That one appearance, I had tens of thousands of dollars worth of job offers, and one of them was Buddy Hackett saw me, and that night, and he called a man named Arvid Nelson, who used to be the entertainment director at the Sahara Hotel here in Vegas, and he had his night off, and he was also watching The Tonight Show. And Buddy said, put him in there, because Buddy had points in the hotel. He had part ownership of the Sahara. And the next thing I knew, just about 2 months later, there I was, backstage. Frankie Avalon came off. I went on. I did my thing. I came off, and Sonny and Cher did their thing, and that was it. That was the beginning of everything.
Amazing. Now, how did you land a gig on a Tonight Show? That's not something that's easy to do. And
no, it isn't. But you have to remember, this is a time when there weren't thousands and thousands of comedians. There were only a few of us, new guys, and there hadn't been a new comedian in about 6 years when I came along. And it's so ironic. I had an agent then who's a good friend of mine working on an internet project with me today, but David Yeager, and he was a young agent. He got me, he brought the man who makes the decision for who goes on a Tonight Show. He brought him into a club I was working in New York in the Village, where I did very hip material, and the guy hated it. He actually said David Brenner does vomit material. And he said not only will he never be on the Tonight Show, we're not going to let him in the building at 30 Rockefeller. So that got me angry.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what? I'm not going to quit until I do that Tonight Show. So I really buckled down for the next few months, and then I did an open audition. And I went on, and I just destroyed it. That was on the 24th of December, right around now. And the next thing, I got a call on January 7th from a TV agent saying, Tonight Show wants you tomorrow night. Are you ready? And I used the word Bond line from a movie with John Wayne. I said, I was born ready. Arrogant, huh? And that's how I got it.
That's amazing. And you're a guy who was just going to do it one time, and then that was it, and then you could say you've done it.
Yeah, but what happened is after that, I got all this work, and the Ed Sullivan Show, there was a guy, Vince Calandra, he wanted to put me on television, but the Ed Sullivan Show turned it down, said, no, we don't want to put a young comedian on. And then after I did the Tonight Show, the Sullivan people saw it, and they told Vince Calandra, they said, you were right, get him on. And believe it or not, I did the last live Ed Sullivan Show. Not knowing no one knew it was the last live. Ed was, senile at that time and pretty bad off. And I mean, he was walking around wearing fish heads around his neck. I mean, whatever, it was really weird. And I did it, and it was the first time, they said, in the history of the show that someone got a standing ovation, his first appearance. And unfortunately, they went to commercial break, but I saw the audience stand. And I got a contract to do a bunch of Sullivans at real good money, but there were no more. Now I'm going to tell you the irony of this whole thing. So there, I'm the last comedian to do the Ed Sullivan Show, and the Ed Sullivan Show goes in they had some tape shows, and then it went off the air. Now I get a call from David Letterman years later, and he says, would you do me a favor and appear? I'm going over, to CBS, and I'm going to be in the theater there. It's all new to me. I'd really like to relax, and I know I can count on you. Would you do a show that first week? I said, yeah, sure, absolutely. And I went over there, and I didn't know that it was the first show in that theater. And I'm standing backstage, and the guy said, hey, David, he says, nice to have you here. You're the first one here. And I realized that here I was. I walked off of that stage, the last comedian on Sullivan, and 23 years later, I'm walking back on that same stage as the first comedian on the David Letterman Show.
Amazing.
Isn't that something?
Now, you also hosted a lot of those talk shows, too, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, I did. I hosted the Tonight Show a lot, and I co-hosted Douglas a lot, and I did a lot of I loved it. That's what I really wanted to do, actually.
But there was no room for too many Tonight Shows, I guess, if there was. But that you were. I mean, I remember seeing you for years and years and years. You were always on the Tonight Show. Yeah, I did. I actually did. With records, and I want to tell people. I'm going to tell you what my records are. And I did not use steroids, okay? I want to get that straight. That's right.
But I did the most Tonight Shows, 158 Tonight Shows. I did the most Douglas shows, and I've been on, appeared as a guest on more talk shows than any entertainer in the history of show business. Now, let me tell you what that's all worth, okay? Let's say I say to you at the end of this, hey, listen, why don't we have dinner tonight together? My treat. And we go somewhere on the strip, nice restaurant, we have a nice dinner. And then I walk up to the cashier and I say to her, after, to pay, I say to the waiter, and it comes over, I said, I did more Tonight Shows than anybody and more Douglases, and I've been on more talk shows than any entertainer. He would say to me, that's $107.40, sir.
That's right.
So let's put everything in perspective here.
Well, for